My name is Beth Taylor. I'm 58 years old. And at my daughter's wedding, in front of more than 200 guests, she confessed through the microphone that she had always hated being called my daughter. The crowd burst into laughter while I sat there frozen, counting every heartbeat like it might stop the pain. They laughed. They actually laughed. Like it was some kind of clever joke, some witty observation about independence and modern womanhood. They raised their champagne glasses and clinked them together while my world crumbled into dust right there at table number 3, where they'd seated me between her husband's aunt who smelled like mothballs and a cousin I'd never met who spent the entire reception on his phone. They laughed. But none of them knew. None of them had any idea that the name she was ashamed of, the name she publicly rejected with such casual cruelty, hid a $10 million inheritance from her late father. Before we continue, please subscribe to Karen Stories, hit the notification bell, like this video, and tell us in the comments what city you're watching from. You want to know what real pain feels like? It's not a sharp stab. It's not dramatic. It's the slow realization that the person you loved most in this world, the person you sacrificed everything for, sees you as nothing more than an embarrassment. An inconvenience. A footnote in their story that they'd rather erase. Until that night, I thought I'd raised a grateful child. Not perfect, God knows none of us are perfect, but grateful. Aware. Conscious of the sacrifices made, the roads paved, the doors opened. I thought we had something. I thought after everything we'd been through together, after every tear and triumph, we had built something unbreakable. Her name is Rebecca Taylor. My only child. My heartbeat since the day I buried her father. My reason for waking up every morning when depression told me to stay in bed. My reason for working double shifts when my body screamed for rest. My reason for everything. I worked as a nurse at St. Mary's Hospital for 32 years. Do you know what that means? Do you know what it's like to work double shifts, sometimes triple shifts, to send your child to the best schools? To make sure she never knew the hunger I grew up with? To make sure she never wore hand-me-down clothes like I did? To make sure she never felt the sting of being the poor kid in class? I grew up in a trailer park outside of Richmond. My mother cleaned houses. My father left when I was 6. I know what poverty tastes like. It tastes like powdered milk and shame. It tastes like government cheese sandwiches and the knowledge that everyone at school knows you're on free lunch. I swore, I made a sacred vow to myself and to God, that my daughter would never know that taste. So I worked. Oh God, how I worked. 12-hour shifts that turned into 16-hour shifts. Holidays. Weekends. I worked Christmas Eve while other mothers decorated trees. I worked Thanksgiving while other families gathered around tables heavy with food and laughter. I worked every birthday, every anniversary of my husband's death, every day that grief tried to pull me under. And I did it with a smile. I did it without complaint. Because that's what mothers do. That's what love looks like when it's stripped of all pretense and Instagram filters. Love looks like exhausted feet in nursing shoes. Love looks like back pain that never quite goes away. Love looks like falling asleep in your scrubs because you're too tired to change. Her father. God, her father. James Alexander Taylor. The love of my life. The only man who ever made me feel like I was enough just as I was. We met when I was 23, fresh out of nursing school, idealistic and naive and full of dreams about changing the world one patient at a time. He was a financial consultant. Smart. Ambitious. Kind in ways that men rarely are. He didn't just love me. He saw me. He saw past the poverty I came from, past the insecurities I wore like a second skin. He saw the woman I could become, and he loved her before she even existed. We had 12 years together. 12 beautiful, imperfect, gloriously ordinary years. We had backyard barbecues and mortgage payments. We had arguments about money and makeup in the dark. We had dreams scribbled on napkins at midnight. We had Rebecca. And then we had cancer. Pancreatic. Stage 4 by the time they caught it. 6 months, they said. Maybe 8 if we're lucky. We weren't lucky. He had 4 months to say goodbye to his daughter. 4 months to write letters she wouldn't open for years. 4 months to set up trusts and funds and fail-safes because even dying, even drowning in his own mortality, he was thinking about her future. About our future. He passed away 10 years ago this November. Rebecca was 20. Just finishing college. Just starting to spread her wings. Just beginning to forget that her father ever existed. I watched it happen. I watched her memories of him fade like old photographs left in sunlight. At first, she talked about him constantly. Dad would have loved this. Dad would have laughed at that. Dad would have been so proud. But gradually, painfully, the references became less frequent. The memories are less sharp. Until he became more myth than man. More ideas than reality. But before he died, before the morphine and the pain became too much, he made arrangements. He left a trust fund in her name. A substantial trust fund. Life insurance policies. Investment accounts he'd been building since the day she was born. Real estate holdings I didn't even know existed. $10 million. A fortune she never knew existed because I wanted her to learn the value of effort before wealth. I wanted her to understand that money doesn't just appear. That security has to be built brick by brick, dollar by dollar, sacrifice by sacrifice. I wanted her to be hungry before she was fed. I wanted her to struggle just enough to appreciate ease. Was that wrong? Was I cruel to keep it from her? I don't know anymore. I thought I was teaching her. Building character. Preventing entitlement. Now I wonder if I was just punishing her for having opportunities one never had. She went to Princeton. Full scholarship, thank God, because even with James's life insurance, I couldn't have afforded the tuition. She studied economics. Graduated summa cum laude. Got a job at a prestigious consulting firm in Manhattan. Made 6 figures right out of school. I was so proud. So unbelievably proud. This was everything we'd worked for. Everything James had dreamed of. His daughter is successful, independent and brilliant. She started dating Michael when she was 26. Michael Chin. Harvard MBA. Old money. Connecticut estate kind of money. Country club membership passed down through generations of money. The kind of money that comes with arrogance and entitlement and the unshakable belief that some people are simply born better than others. I didn't like him from the beginning. There was something cold about him. Something calculating. The way he assessed value in everything and everyone. The way he looked at Rebecca like she was a prize he'd won rather than a person he loved. But she was smitten. Absolutely head over heels. And who was I to interfere? Who was I to tell my adult daughter that her choice in men was questionable? I'd raised her to be independent, to make her own decisions, to trust her own judgment. So I smiled. I welcomed him into our home. I made his favorite meals when they visited. I pretended not to notice the way he corrected her pronunciation at dinner parties. The way he interrupted her stories. The way he made jokes at her expense and called it playfulness. They dated for 3 years before he proposed. On a yacht. With a photographer hidden nearby to capture her surprise. With a ring that cost more than I made in a year. With all the manufactured romance that money can buy but genuine love rarely needs. The wedding planning started immediately. And that's when I started to disappear. At first it was subtle. Small exclusions that could be explained away. Michael's mother had opinions about the venue. Michael's sister knew a better florist. Michael's family had traditions that needed to be honored. And slowly, gradually, I was pushed to the margins of my own daughter's wedding. I wasn't consulted about the dress. I wasn't included in the cake tasting. I wasn't asked about the music or the flowers or any of the 1,000 decisions that go into planning a wedding. I was simply informed. Told. Instructed on when to show up and what to wear and where to sit. "It's just easier this way, Mom," Rebecca said when I finally worked up the courage to ask why I was being excluded. Michael's mother has experience with these kinds of events. She knows what she's doing. You'd be overwhelmed. Overwhelmed. As if I hadn't planned my own wedding. As if I hadn't organized every birthday party, every school event, every milestone of her life. As if I was too simple, too unsophisticated, too working class to understand the complexities of ordering flowers and choosing a menu. I swallowed my hurt. I told myself it was wedding stress. I told myself that after the big day, things would go back to normal. I told myself a lot of lies that year. The wedding was on a Saturday in June. Perfect weather. Clear skies. The kind of day that poets write about and romantics dream of. The venue was a historic estate in the Hamptons. Rolling lawns. White tents. Flowers everywhere, bursting with color and fragrance and the kind of casual elegance that costs a fortune to achieve. There were over 200 guests. Politicians. Business executives. Society people whose names appeared regularly in the Times wedding announcements. People who summered and wintered and treated seasons like verbs. People who had never worked a day in their lives and considered it a mark of distinction. I knew maybe 10 people there. My sister. A few cousins. Some of Rebecca's childhood friends who remembered me. Everyone else was Michael's world. Michael's people. Michael's future that my daughter was marrying into. They'd seated me at table 3. Not at the head table with the wedding party. Not even at table 1 or 2 with close family. Table 3. With strangers. With Michael's aunt who spent the entire cocktail hour complaining about the catering and a cousin who never looked up from his phone. I watched my daughter glide through that crowd like she'd been born to it. Designer gown. Professional hair and makeup. Champagne in hand. Laughing at jokes I couldn't hear. Posing for photographs I'd never be shown. Living in a world I'd bought her entrance to but would never be invited to join. The ceremony was beautiful. I'll give them that. Beautiful in the way that carefully curated, professionally orchestrated events are beautiful. Perfect. Polished. Utterly devoid of anything real or raw or genuine. When they said their vows, I cried. Of course I cried. What mother doesn't cry at her daughter's wedding? But my tears weren't just joy. They were in grief. They were the recognition that I was losing her. That I'd already lost her. That the girl I raised had been replaced by this polished stranger who called me mother in public and barely texted me in private. The reception started with champagne toasts. Michael's father went first, delivering a speech about legacy and tradition and the joining of 2 families. As if my family, my history, my existence mattered at all in this equation. Then Michael spoke. About love and partnership and choosing your own path. About Rebecca being strong enough to forge her own identity. About respecting her independence and her choices. He never once mentioned me. Never once acknowledged that someone had raised this woman he claimed to love. That someone had sacrificed and struggled and worked themselves to exhaustion to give her the foundation she was now building on. And then they handed her the microphone. I expected a sweet speech. I expected thank yous and maybe, just maybe, a mention of her father. A recognition of where she came from. A nod to the shoulders she stood on. Instead, she looked right at me, made eye contact across that crowded room, and said, "I love my husband for accepting me for who I am, not for being her daughter." I've always hated being called that. The hall erupted in laughter. Actual laughter. Like it was the most clever thing they'd ever heard. Like publicly humiliating your mother at your own wedding was the height of sophisticated humor. Even her friends clapped. Girls I'd driven to soccer practice. Girls I'd let sleep over countless weekends. Girls I'd fed and bandaged and comforted when their own mothers were too busy. They clapped like trained seals while my daughter eviscerated me in front of strangers. I forced a smile. What else could I do? Stand up and scream? Cry? Make a scene that would give them all even more reason to see me as the embarrassing mother who couldn't handle a joke. So I smiled. I raised my glass. I pretended that my heart wasn't being torn into pieces so small they'd never fit back together. But inside. Oh God, inside. I felt her father die all over again. I felt every sacrifice turn to ash in my mouth. I felt 30 years of love and labor and late nights and early mornings crumble into nothing. She had just buried the pride of the woman who carried her for 9 months with one sentence. Who stayed up all night when she had colic? Who quit a better-paying job to have more time with her? Who postponed every dream and ambition and desire to make sure her daughter's dreams came true? She had just told 200 people that the greatest shame of her life was being connected to me. The speeches continued. More toasts. More laughter. More celebration of this perfect couple and their perfect future. I sat there barely breathing, counting the minutes until I could leave without causing more drama. But I couldn't leave. Not yet. Because they hadn't cut the cake. They hadn't done the first dance. They hadn't thrown the bouquet. There were hours left of this nightmare, and I had to sit through every excruciating minute with a smile on my face. Michael's mother leaned over at one point and said, "Rebecca has such a wonderful sense of humor, doesn't she?" Like the public humiliation of one's mother was evidence of a sparkling personality rather than a character flaw. I nodded. "Wonderful," I said. My voice sounded like it was coming from underwater. Like it belonged to someone else. The dinner was served. I don't remember what it tasted like. I pushed food around my plate and pretended to eat while my stomach churned with hurt and anger and a grief so profound it had no name. Around me, strangers made small talk. They discussed their summer homes and their children's private schools and their upcoming trips to Europe. They existed in a world where mothers were decorative accessories, useful for producing grandchildren but otherwise unnecessary. I'd worked so hard to give Rebecca access to this world. I'd sacrificed everything so she could sit at tables like this, wearing dresses like that, living a life like this. And she'd used her first public moment in this world to make it clear that I was an embarrassment she'd overcome rather than a foundation she'd built on. The father-daughter dance had been replaced with a mother-son dance. Michael danced with his mother while Rebecca stood and watched, smiling and clapping. When it ended, someone suggested Rebecca dance with her mother too. "Oh, I think we'll skip that tradition," Rebecca said lightly, laughing. "We're not really the sentimental type. We're not." As if we were a unit. As if she spoke for both of us. As if I'd agreed to be erased from these moments. The reception dragged on. Endless. Eternal. A special circle of hell designed specifically for mothers whose daughters have outgrown them. Finally, mercifully, it ended. The bride and groom left in a shower of sparklers and well-wishes. The guests began to disperse, drunk and happy and completely unaware of the devastation they'd witnessed. That night, I didn't confront her. What would I have said? How dare you be honest about your feelings? How dare you embarrass me in front of strangers? How dare you stop performing the role of grateful daughter? I had no words that wouldn't make things worse. No arguments that wouldn't sound like manipulation. No way to explain that you can love someone desperately and still hurt them profoundly. So I gathered the wedding favors from my table. Little boxes of designer chocolates tied with silk ribbons. I collected the childhood photographs Rebecca had displayed on a table near the entrance. Pictures of her first day of school, her dance recitals, her graduations. Pictures that included me, before she learned to crop me out. I packed them carefully in my purse and went home alone. My house felt different that night. Emptier. Even though Rebecca hadn't lived there in years, even though I'd long since converted her bedroom into a guest room, the house felt abandoned. Haunted by the ghost of the relationship I thought we had. I sat beside my late husband's photograph, the one I keep on the mantel. It's my favorite picture of him. He's laughing at something I said, his eyes crinkled at the corners, his whole face alive with joy. It was taken 3 months before his diagnosis. Before pain became his constant companion. Before death moved into our house and made itself comfortable. I whispered to that photograph like I do sometimes when the loneliness becomes too much. Did you hear her? I asked. Did you hear what she said? The girl we raised is ashamed of her blood. Ashamed of her name. Ashamed of us. The photograph didn't answer. Of course it didn't. But I imagined what James would say if he could. He'd be heartbroken. Devastated. This man who worked himself to exhaustion to provide for her. Who set up college funds and trust accounts and insurance policies. Who spent his last coherent days writing her letters about how to live well and love deeply and stay connected to your roots. He'd sacrificed too. Maybe not in the same visible ways I had, but he'd given up dreams for her. Taken jobs he hated because they paid better. Stayed in a city he didn't love because it had good schools. Postponed retirement so she could have a wedding fund. And she'd rejected his name. The name he'd been so proud of. Taylor. A simple name. A common name. But ours. Our legacy. Our identity. But instead of revenge, instead of anger, I promised him something stronger. I promised I'd make sure she learned the truth behind the name she rejected. I promised I'd teach her what that name really meant. What it represented. What it was worth. Because here's what Rebecca didn't know. Here's what I'd kept from her for 10 years, believing I was protecting her, teaching her, preparing her. 3 days after the wedding, I received a letter from a law firm in Boston. Morrison, Whitfield and Associates. The firm that had handled James's estate. The firm that had been managing his trusts and accounts for a decade. The envelope was thick. Heavy with documents and official stamps. I knew what it was before I opened it. I'd been expecting this letter for months, dreading it and anticipating it in equal measure. It confirmed what I already knew. The inheritance papers were finalized. Rebecca was turning 30 in 3 months. The trust was ready to be released. $10 million, left in trust by her father, to be released when she turned 30. $10 million that she had no idea existed. The letter outlined everything. Real estate holdings James had quietly accumulated. Life insurance policies with beneficiaries and contingencies. Investment accounts that had grown substantially over 10 years. Assets I'd never touched, never claimed, never even told her about. But there was a condition. James, in his infinite wisdom, in his desperate attempt to keep some part of himself alive in his daughter's life, had included a condition. The money would only be released if she continued to carry his last name with pride. Those were his exact words, written in his own hand in an addendum to the trust documents. To be released when my daughter turns 30, provided she continues to carry our family name with pride and hasn't legally changed her surname or publicly rejected her heritage. I laughed when I read it. Actually laughed. Not a happy laugh. A broken, jagged laugh that hurt my throat and brought tears I'd been holding back for days. Because the name she publicly rejected, the name she said she'd always hated being associated with, was the only key to the fortune she'd soon beg to unlock. The irony was so perfect it almost felt scripted. Like James was somehow orchestrating this from beyond the grave. Like he knew. Like he'd seen into the future and understood exactly what kind of person his baby girl would become. Rebecca Taylor Chen. That's what she'd become after the wedding. She'd taken Michael's name immediately. Changed all her social media profiles before the reception even ended. Rebecca Taylor Chen, as if Taylor was just a placeholder. A temporary name to be discarded once something better came along. She'd erased us. Legally. Officially. Publicly. She'd made it clear that whatever we'd given her, whatever we'd meant to her, wasn't worth keeping. But she didn't know about the money. She didn't know that her casual cruelty had just cost her a fortune. And I decided not to tell her. Not yet. Not until she'd learned something. Not until she understood what that name really meant. I watched her social media filled with photos from her honeymoon. Bora Bora. Overwater bungalows. Crystal clear water. Sunset dinners. All tagged under her new name. Rebecca Chen. Mrs. Michael Chen. Every post is carefully curated to project success and happiness and a life well lived. She had erased every trace of me. Every trace of her father. Every trace of our name. Her profile had been scrubbed clean of our history. No childhood photos. No family memories. Nothing that connected her to the people who'd given her life. The wedding photos were posted with long captions about new beginnings and chosen families and creating your own path. Not one mentioned me. Not one acknowledged where she came from or how she got here. I read every word. I looked at every photo. I felt every intentional omission like a knife between my ribs. So I began to write everything down. Every insult. Every silence. Every moment of casual cruelty. I bought a little blue notebook from the drugstore and I documented it all. I wrote about the wedding speech. About being seated at table 3. About the father-daughter dance that never happened. About the childhood photos she'd nearly forgotten to include. About the thank you cards that never came. I wrote about the phone calls that went unreturned. During the holidays she was suddenly too busy to attend. The birthdays she remembered 3 days later with generic text messages. The anniversary of her father's death that passed without acknowledgement. I documented her transformation from Rebecca Taylor, the girl I raised, to Rebecca Chen, the woman who found us embarrassing. And when the right time came, when she'd learned enough, when the universe decided she was ready, I would give her the inheritance. But with a lesson attached. A lesson she'd never forget. The months after the wedding were quiet. Too quiet. Rebecca and Michael returned from their honeymoon and settled into married life in their Manhattan penthouse. The kind of penthouse that appears in architectural magazines. Floor-to-ceiling windows. Designer furniture. Views that cost more than most people's homes. She posted about dinner parties and gallery openings and charity galas. She posted about Michael's promotions and their weekend trips to Connecticut to visit his family. She posted about her life, and I existed nowhere in it. I waited for a call. A text. A coffee invitation. Some acknowledgement that I still existed. That I was still her mother. That the wedding speech had been a joke in poor taste rather than a mission statement. The call never came. I thought about reaching out myself. About being a bigger person. About swallowing my hurt and pretending nothing had happened. But something stopped me. Pride maybe. Or dignity. Or the simple understanding that I was tired of being the only one who tried. 6 months passed like this. 6 months of silence broken only by occasional text messages so generic they could have been sent to anyone. Happy Thanksgiving, Mom. Hope you're well. As if I was a distant acquaintance rather than the woman who'd birthed her. I spent Thanksgiving alone that year. My sister invited me to her house, but I couldn't face the questions. The sympathy. The well-meaning advice about reconciliation and forgiveness and family being family no matter what. I spent Christmas alone too. I put up a small tree, more out of habit than any real holiday spirit. I hung the ornaments Rebecca had made as a child. Popsicle stick reindeer. Construction paper angels. Pasta necklaces painted gold. Evidence that she'd once loved me. Once needed me. Once considered me the center of her universe. On Christmas morning, I received a text. Merry Christmas, Mom. Spending the holiday with Michael's family. Hope you understand. I understood perfectly. But I was also planning something. Something that had been taking shape in my mind since I'd opened that letter from the law firm. Something that felt like justice even though revenge is supposed to be beneath us. I decided to organize a charity gala in James's name. A foundation to honor single parents who raise their children alone. Who work double shifts and sacrifice dreams and give everything they have so their children can have more. It took months to organize. I used some of the life insurance money I'd been saving. I rented a ballroom at a nice hotel. I hired a caterer and a photographer and a professional event planner who thought my idea was beautiful. I invited everyone I could think of. Nurses I'd worked with over the years. Families I'd met through the hospital. Friends and acquaintances and distant relatives. And of course, I invited Rebecca. The invitation was formal. Printed on heavy cardstock. It explained the purpose of the event. To honor James Alexander Taylor and his legacy of love and sacrifice. To support single parents struggling to give their children opportunities they never had. I called her personally to make sure she received it. Rebecca, I said when she finally answered after 4 rings. Did you get the invitation to the gala? There was a pause. Long enough that I wondered if she'd forgotten who I was. Oh. Yeah. That's really nice, Mom. I'm not sure if we can make it though. Michael has a work thing that weekend. Please come, I said. I made my voice soft. Gentle. Non-threatening. I want to make peace. I want us to move forward. This foundation is important to me, and it would mean a lot if you were there. Another pause. I could hear Michael in the background asking who was calling. Let me check our calendar, she said finally. I'll let you know. 3 days later, she texted. Michael says we can make it work. We'll be there. I smiled when I read it. Not a happy smile. A knowing smile. The smile of someone who's about to teach a lesson is a long time coming. The gala was on a Saturday in April. Exactly 10 months after her wedding. The ballroom was decorated simply but elegantly. Photos of James everywhere. Pictures of him holding baby Rebecca. Pictures of our little family before cancer ripped us apart. Pictures of the man whose name she'd learned to hate. About 150 people attended. Not the 200 from her wedding, but enough. More than enough for what I had planned. Rebecca arrived late. She always arrived late now, as if punctuality was something working-class people worried about. She came dressed in a designer gown that probably cost more than I made in a month. Diamonds at her throat and wrists that glittered under the ballroom lights. Michael beside her in an expensive suit, looking bored before the event even started. She found me near the entrance and gave me a brief hug that was more performance than affection. This is nice, Mom, she said, looking around. Really nice. Dad he would have liked this. Would have. As if she had any idea what he would have liked. As if she remembered him beyond the vague nostalgia of old photographs. "Thank you for coming," I said. I kept my voice neutral. Warm but not desperate. "It means a lot to me." "Of course," she said. "We're family." Family. The word felt obscene coming from her mouth. The evening began with cocktails and mingling. I worked the room, thanking people for coming, explaining the foundation's mission. We would provide scholarships for children of single parents. Help with childcare costs. Offer mentorship and support. All the things I'd wished existed when I was raising Rebecca alone. People were generous. Checks were written. Pledges were made. Everyone understood what it meant to struggle. Everyone had witnessed sacrifice. Everyone except Rebecca, who stood in the corner with Michael, looking uncomfortable in a room full of people who worked for a living. Dinner was served. Simple but good. Not the elaborate multi-course meals served at her wedding. Not the kind of food meant to impress rather than nourish. Just honest food served to honest people trying to make the world slightly less cruel. Halfway through dinner, the host took the microphone. She was a woman I'd worked with for years. A single mother herself who'd put 3 kids through college while working as a surgical nurse. She understood what this foundation meant. "Good evening, everyone," she said. "We're here tonight to honor James Alexander Taylor and to launch a foundation that will help families like his. Families where one parent carries the weight of the world on their shoulders so their children can reach for the stars." The room applauded. I saw Rebecca clapping politely, looking slightly confused about where this was going. "Tonight," the host continued, "we're going to reveal the anonymous donor who has funded this foundation with a remarkable gift. A gift of $10 million that will change countless lives." The room went silent. Absolutely silent. $10 million. That kind of money demands attention, commands respect, even from people who claim not to care about wealth. I stood slowly. My legs were shaking but I forced them steady. This was the moment. The moment of truth. The moment when Rebecca would understand exactly what she'd rejected. "The donor," the host said, looking directly at me, "is Mrs. Beth Taylor, widow of James Alexander Taylor, the man whose legacy lives on through the name their daughter rejected." The room fell even more silent if that was possible. The kind of silence that comes when people realize they're witnessing something significant. Something that will be talked about for years. I watched Rebecca's face. Watched the confusion turn to recognition and turn to horror. Watched her smile freeze and crack and crumble. Watched her eyes fill with tears that came too late to matter. $10 million, I said, taking the microphone. My voice was steady. Strong. Years of working in emergency rooms had taught me how to sound calm in crisis. That's what my late husband left our daughter with. That's what James Alexander Taylor, the man whose name she publicly stated she hated being associated with, saved and invested and worked himself to death to provide. I looked directly at Rebecca. She was crying now, mascara running down her carefully made-up face. Michael was whispering urgently in her ear, probably calculating the money they'd lost. "There was one condition," I continued. "Just one simple condition. That she carries his name with pride. That she honors the legacy of the man who loved her more than anything in this world. That she does not reject the identity that was bought with sacrifice and love and late nights and early mornings and a lifetime of putting her needs before his own." Rebecca stood up. Stumbled. "Sit back down." Her mouth was moving but no sound came out. "She rejected that name," I said. My voice was getting louder now, stronger, filled with all the hurt and rage I'd been swallowing for months. At her own wedding, in front of 200 guests, she announced that she'd always hated being called my daughter. That being connected to me, to us, to the family that gave her everything, was her greatest shame. The room was watching her now. Judging her. seeing her not as the polished society wife but as the ungrateful daughter who'd publicly humiliated her dying father's widow. "So that's $10 million? I said. "That fortune that could have set her up for life? That wealth that was supposed to be her inheritance? I'm giving it away. Every penny. To this foundation. To help mothers who actually appreciate sacrifice. To help children who understand that a name isn't a burden. It's a blessing." I wasn't actually giving all of it away. The trust documents were more complicated than that. But she didn't know that. At that moment, she believed she'd lost everything. "Mom," she finally found her voice. It came out as a sob. "Mom, I didn't know." "You didn't know because you never asked," I said. "You never asked about your father's plans. You never asked why I worked so hard. You never asked about the sacrifices made or the dreams deferred. You just took everything and then publicly announced that you were ashamed of where it came from." Michael was pulling at her arm, trying to get her to leave. But she shook him off. She stood up, trembling, and walked toward me through that silent room. "Please," she said. "Please, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I didn't mean. It was supposed to be a joke. A stupid joke. I didn't mean to hurt you." "A joke," I repeated. "You humiliated me in front of 200 people as a joke. You erased me from your life as a joke. You rejected your father's memory as a joke." "I was trying to be sophisticated," she said. The tears were flowing freely now. "Michael's family. They always talk about being self-made, about not relying on your parents. I thought that's what I was supposed to say." "Michael's family," I said, "had trust funds from birth. They're not self-made. They're self-congratulatory. There's a difference." She stood there in front of me, this stranger wearing my daughter's face. This woman who'd traded authenticity for acceptance. Who'd rejected her identity for the approval of people who would never truly accept her anyway. "I want you to understand something," I said quietly. The microphone picked up every word. "Your father died believing that you would honor his memory. He died believing that the name Taylor meant something to you. He died believing that all the sacrifices, all the hard work, all the love would matter." "It did matter," she sobbed. "It does matter. I love you. I love Dad. I got lost. I got caught up in trying to be someone I thought I was supposed to be." "And who were you supposed to be?" I asked. "Who exactly were you trying to become by erasing who you were?" She had no answer for that. How could she? She'd spent so much time running from her past that she'd never stopped to ask where she was running to. The rest of the evening was a blur. People approached me with sympathy and support. They shared their own stories of ungrateful children and complicated families. They wrote bigger checks and made bigger pledges, moved by the drama they'd witnessed. Rebecca and Michael left early. Or maybe they were asked to leave. I honestly don't remember. I just remember feeling empty. Justified but empty. Like I'd won a battle but lost something I couldn't name. After that night, she came to me. Not immediately. She needed time to process, to understand, to let the reality sink in. But eventually, about 2 weeks later, she showed up at my house. It was a Tuesday evening. I was in my garden, trying to coax my tomato plants to produce. I heard her car in the driveway before I saw her. That expensive hybrid that whispered rather than roared. The kind of car that announced wealth without seeming to try. She walked around to the backyard slowly, hesitantly, like she wasn't sure she was allowed to be there anymore. She wasn't wearing designer clothes this time. Just jeans and a simple shirt. Her face was bare of makeup. Her eyes were red and swollen like she'd been crying for days. "Mom," she said, Just that one word. It came out broken. I kept working on my tomatoes. I didn't look up. Rebecca. Can we talk? She asked. Please? I stood up slowly. My knees ached. I was 58 years old and I felt every single year of it. What would you like to talk about? Everything, she said. The money. The wedding. Dad. Everything I've done wrong. I walked over to the patio table and sat down. Gestured for her to join me. She sat across from me, her hands trembling in her lap. I learned the truth, she said. About trust. About Dad's conditions. About everything. From your lawyer, I assume, I said. Since you certainly didn't hear it from me. Michael's lawyer actually, she said. She said his name tasted bitter. He called to discuss our financial planning and mentioned that I'd be eligible for a substantial inheritance when I turned 30. He asked if I'd looked into the requirements. And what did he tell you? I asked. That there was a condition. About keeping the Taylor name. About honoring Dad's legacy. And that by legally changing my name to Chen and by publicly rejecting our family, I'd violated the terms of the trust. She started crying again. Big, gasping sobs that shook her whole body. I didn't know, Mom. I swear to God, I didn't know. If I'd known that Dad had left me anything, that he'd been planning for my future, that the name meant something more than just. Then just what? I asked. Then just your identity? Your history? Your connection to the people who loved you? I thought I was becoming independent, she said. I thought I was proving that I could make it on my own. That I didn't need to rely on my parents' name or reputation or anything. I thought that's what I was supposed to do. You were supposed to remember where you came from, I said. You were supposed to honor the people who got you where you are. You were supposed to understand that independence doesn't mean erasure. Michael said. She started, then stopped. Michael said what? I prompted. He said that successful people don't talk about their parents. That it makes you seem weak or dependent. That in his circles, people respect those who appear to have built everything themselves. I laughed. It wasn't a kind laugh. Rebecca, Michael's family has been wealthy for 4 generations. He's never built anything himself. He inherited a network and a reputation and money that his great-grandfather earned. He's the definition of dependent. I know that now, she said quietly. I know a lot of things now that I should have known then. So what do you want from me? I asked. Forgiveness? Permission to feel bad? A way to get the money anyway? She flinched like I'd slapped her. I want to apologize. Really apologize. Not because of the money, but because I hurt you. Because I was cruel and thoughtless and I let myself become someone I'm not proud of. Go on, I said. I wasn't making this easy for her. Maybe that was cruel of me. Maybe I should have been more generous. But I'd been generous for 30 years. I'd given her everything. She could give me honesty. At the wedding, she said, when I made that speech about hating being called your daughter. I thought I was being clever. I thought I was making a sophisticated joke about independence and finding your own identity. Michael's sister had said something similar at her wedding, and everyone thought it was brilliant. But you weren't joking, I said. Not really. She was quiet for a long time. No, she finally admitted. I wasn't. I was ashamed. I was ashamed of our house and our background and the fact that I worked at a public hospital and you didn't know which fork to use at fancy dinners. I was ashamed that Michael's parents had summer homes and you had a mortgage. I was ashamed that I came from struggle instead of privilege. And now? I asked. Now I'm ashamed of being ashamed, she said. Now I understand that everything Michael's family has, they got from someone else's work. But everything you have, everything you gave me, you earned. You worked for it. You sacrificed for it. You bled for it. Your father bled for it too, I said. Literally. He worked himself sick to provide for you. He took jobs he hated because they paid better. He never took vacations because he was saving for your college fund. He died at 45 years old because stress and overwork weakened his body enough for cancer to take hold. I know, she whispered. Do you? I asked. Do you really know? Because you never asked about him. After the first year, you never mentioned him. You let him fade away like he'd never existed. It hurt too much to remember, she said. Every time I thought about him, I felt this overwhelming guilt. Guilt that I was living and he wasn't. Guilt that I was moving forward and leaving him behind. It was easier to just not think about it. So you erased him, I said. You erased his memory, his name, his legacy. You decided that your discomfort was more important than his sacrifice. I was wrong, she said. I was so incredibly wrong. And I don't know how to fix it. I don't know how to make this right. I looked at her sitting there, this broken version of the daughter I'd raised. Part of me wanted to gather her in my arms and tell her it was all okay, that we could fix this, that love was enough. But another part of me, the part that had been humiliated and erased and rejected, wasn't ready to forgive yet. What about Michael? I asked. What does he think about all this? Her face darkened. Michael thinks I should sue. He thinks the trust conditions are archaic and controlling and that no court would uphold them. And what do you think? I think he's wrong, she said quietly. I think Dad had every right to put conditions on money he earned. I think if I'd been a better daughter, it wouldn't have mattered. I think. She paused, tears streaming down her face. I think my marriage might be a mistake. I hadn't expected that. Why? Because Michael doesn't understand, she said. He doesn't understand why I'm upset about losing the inheritance. He thinks I'm overreacting. He says $10 million isn't that much money in the grand scheme of things and that we'll make it on our own anyway. $10 million isn't that much money, I repeated. Only someone who's never struggled would say something like that. That's what I told him, she said. And he said that I was being dramatic. That I was letting my working-class roots show. That I needed to stop acting like poverty was noble or something to be proud of. What did you say? I said that my working-class roots were the only thing about me that was real, she said. That everything else, all the sophistication and polish and pretension, was just a costume I'd been wearing to fit into his world. And that maybe it was time to take the costume off. We sat in silence for a long time. The sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. My tomato plants rustled in the evening breeze. Somewhere in the neighborhood, a dog barked. The money's not entirely gone, I said finally. Her head snapped up. What? The trust conditions are complicated, I explained. The money doesn't just disappear if you violate them. It goes into a secondary trust that can still be accessed under certain circumstances. What circumstances? She asked. That you restore the Taylor name, I said. That you make a public statement honoring your father's memory. That you work with the foundation for a minimum of 2 years. That you demonstrate through actions, not words, that you understand what that name represents. You knew this, she said slowly. At the gala. You knew the money wasn't really gone forever. I did. So you lied to me. To everyone. I simplified, I said. I wanted you to understand what you'd thrown away. I wanted you to feel the loss. I wanted you to experience what it's like to lose everything because of careless words and thoughtless actions. She stared at me for a long moment. Then she started laughing. Not a happy laugh. A broken, slightly hysterical laugh that turned back into sobs. "You're right," she said. "You're absolutely right. I deserved that. I deserved all of it. What are you going to do?" I asked. "I don't know," she said. "Legally changing my name back is complicated. Michael would be furious. His family would see it as an insult. It might end my marriage." "Is that a bad thing?" I asked gently. She thought about it. "I really thought about it." "No," she said finally. "No, I don't think it is. I think I married Michael because I was trying to become someone I thought was better than who I was. But I'm not better. I'm just different. And different isn't the same as improved." "What about the life you built?" I asked. "The penthouse and the society friends and the charity galas?" "I hate that life," she admitted. "I've hated it from the beginning. I hate the pretension and the judgment and the constant performance. I hate that nobody says what they mean. I hate that kindness is seen as weakness and authenticity is seen as unsophisticated. I hate who I become in those rooms." "Then why did you want it so badly?" "Because I thought it was what success looked like," she said. "I thought if I could just get into those rooms, wear those clothes, marry the right man, I'd finally feel like I'd made it. Like I'd escaped." "Escaped from what?" "From being the poor kid," she said. "From being the girl whose mom worked double shifts. From being the scholarship student who didn't belong. I thought if I could just get far enough away from where I started, I'd finally feel good enough." "And did you?" I asked. "No," she whispered. "I just felt further from everything real. Further from you. Further from Dad. Further from myself." The sky was almost completely dark now. Lightning bugs were starting to appear in the garden, tiny points of light in the gathering darkness. "Can I tell you something?" she asked. "Of course." "That speech at my wedding," she said. "The one where I said I hated being called your daughter. I practiced it for weeks. I wrote it and rewrote it and practiced in front of the mirror until I had the tone just right. It wasn't spontaneous. It wasn't a slip of the tongue. I planned it." My chest tightened. Somehow, knowing it was premeditated made it worse. "Michael's sister helped me write it," she continued. "She said it would establish me as my own person in front of Michael's family. She said it would show them that I wasn't going to be one of those wives who clings to their parents. She said it would make them respect me." "Did it work?" I asked. "They laughed," she said bitterly. "They thought it was hilarious. Michael's mother told me later that it was the perfect way to set boundaries. That too many young women let their mothers become too involved in their marriages." "And what did you think?" "I thought I'd done well," she admitted. "For about 30 seconds. Then I looked at your face. And I realized what I'd actually done. But by then it was too late to take it back. So I just pretended it was fine. I pretended you understood it was a joke. I pretended we were both sophisticated enough to laugh about it." "But I wasn't laughing," I said. "No," she said. "You weren't. You were dying. I could see it in your eyes. But I told myself you were being overly sensitive. That you were making it about you when it was supposed to be about me. I told myself a lot of lies that night." "Why are you telling me this now?" I asked. "Because you deserve the truth," she said. "Because I'm tired of lying. Because if we're going to fix this, if there's any chance of fixing this, it has to start with honesty." "And what's the honest truth?" I asked. "That I was cruel," she said. That I was ashamed of you and ashamed of myself for being ashamed. That I tried to become someone else and lost myself completely in the process. That I married a man I don't even like very much because he represented a life I thought I wanted. That I rejected the best parts of myself because they didn't fit the image I was trying to project. She was crying hard now, her shoulders shaking. And the honest truth is that I miss you. I miss us. I miss being someone real instead of this polished fake version. I miss being your daughter, Mom. I really, really miss it. I felt my own tears coming then. I'd held them back for so long, but they came anyway. I miss you too, I said. I've missed you since long before the wedding. I've missed you since you stopped calling unless you needed something. Since you stopped coming home for holidays. Since you started being embarrassed to introduce me to your friends. I'm sorry, she said. I'm so sorry for all of it. Sorry isn't enough, I said. I need to know that you understand. I need to know that you've learned something. I have, she said. I've learned that you can't run from yourself. I've learned that shame is a poison that destroys everything it touches. I've learned that my father's name, our name, isn't something to escape from. It's something to build on. And the money? I asked. Is this about money? No, she said firmly. Honestly, no. If I never see a penny of that inheritance, I'll survive. Michael and I both make good salaries. We'll be fine financially. But losing you? Losing our relationship? Losing the chance to be your daughter again? That's not something I can survive on. I wanted to believe her. God, I wanted to believe her so badly. But trust is like glass. Once it's shattered, you can glue the pieces back together, but you'll always see the cracks. What about Michael? I asked again. I'm going to talk to him, she said. Really talk to him. About what I need. About who I am. About the fact that I can't keep living a life that requires me to pretend my history doesn't exist. And if he doesn't understand? Then I'll have some difficult decisions to make, she said. But whatever happens, I need to start being honest. With him. With myself. With you. We sat there in the darkness, two women trying to find their way back to each other. It wasn't a perfect moment. There was no dramatic music or tearful embrace. Just two people who loved each other trying to figure out if love was enough to bridge the distance that had grown between them. Can I ask you something? She said after a while. Anything. Do you think Dad would be disappointed in me? I thought about James. About his laugh and his kindness and his fierce love for his daughter. Yes, I said honestly. I think he would be disappointed in some of your choices. But I also think he would be proud that you're trying to make it right. Your father believed in second chances. In redemption. In the idea that we're all works in progress. I wish I remembered him better, she said. I wish I had more than just fragments and photographs. I have his letters, I said. The ones he wrote before he died. He wrote you one for every birthday until you turned 40. I've been holding on to them. Her breath caught. You never told me that. You never seemed interested, I said. You never asked about him. What was I supposed to do? Force memories on you that you seemed determined to forget? Can I read them? She asked. Can I read the ones for the birthdays I've already had? Yes, I said. But not tonight. Tonight we've had enough emotional excavation. Come back tomorrow. Come back when you've slept and thought and decided what you really want. She nodded. Stood up slowly. Thank you, Mom. For not giving up on me. For teaching me this lesson even though it hurt. For still being here when I finally figured out what I'd lost. I'm your mother, I said. That doesn't come with an off switch. No matter how much you hurt me, no matter how far you drift, you're still my daughter. I don't deserve you, she said. Probably not, I agreed. But love isn't about deserving. It's about choosing. And I choose you, Rebecca. I've always chosen you. I just need you to choose me back. She left shortly after that. I sat in my garden for a long time after her car disappeared down the street. I thought about James and the life we'd built and the daughter we'd raised. I thought about second chances and redemption and whether people can really change. I didn't have answers. But I had hope. And maybe that was enough. The next day, Rebecca came back. She came alone this time, without Michael. She looked tired but clearer somehow. Like she'd spent the night crying out all the poison that had been building up inside her. I talked to Michael, she said. And? He doesn't understand, she said. He thinks I'm having some kind of breakdown. He wants me to see a therapist who specializes in helping people adjust to wealth and high society. Are you going to? No, she said. Because I don't need to adjust to that life. I need to leave it. That's a big decision, I said. I know. But it's the right one. I'm going to start the process of legally changing my name back to Taylor. I'm going to put out a statement on my social media explaining why. I'm going to tell the truth about my background and my family and everything I've been hiding. Michael won't like that, I said. Michael and I are separating, she said. I told him this morning. He's angry, but honestly, I think he's more angry about the optics than about losing me. He's worried about what his family will think. About how it will look. How do you feel? I asked. Scared, she admitted. Relieved. Hopeful. Like I'm finally waking up from a dream that was slowly turning into a nightmare. What will you do? I don't know yet, she said. Figure out who I am without Michael's world defining me. Maybe move back home for a while if you'll have me. Work with the foundation like Dad's trust requires. Try to become someone I can actually respect. You can stay here, I said. Your room is still here. It's been waiting for you. She started crying again. Thank you. For everything. For not giving up on me. For loving me even when I didn't deserve it. That's what mothers do, I said simply. And I gave her the letters. All of them. The ones from her 21st birthday, her 25th, her 30th. Letters her father had written in his final weeks, when he knew he was dying but wanted to leave her something more than money. She read them in my living room, curled up on the same couch where she used to do homework. She cried through every single one. They were beautiful letters, full of wisdom and love and the desperate hope that his daughter would grow into someone he could be proud of. One letter in particular stood out. The one for her 30th birthday. The birthday she'd just had. In it, James wrote, "By now, you're old enough to understand that life is about choices. About who you choose to be and what you choose to value. I hope you've chosen kindness over cruelty. Authenticity over pretension. Family over status. But if you haven't, if you've gotten lost somewhere along the way, it's never too late to find your way back. Your mother will always be there, waiting. Because that's who she is. And being her daughter, being part of our family, being a Taylor, that's not a burden. It's the greatest gift I could ever give you." Rebecca read that passage out loud through tears. He knew, she said. Somehow he knew I might get lost. Or he hoped you wouldn't, I said. Sometimes we write instructions for the disasters we hope will never happen. I want to make him proud, she said. I want to make you both proud. I don't know if that's possible after everything I've done, but I want to try. Then try, I said. That's all any of us can do. And she did try. Over the months that followed, I watched my daughter slowly transform back into someone I recognized. It wasn't easy. There were setbacks and struggles and moments when she almost gave up. Her divorce was messy. Michael fought her on everything out of spite more than necessity. His family spread rumors about her being unstable, having a breakdown, throwing away a good life because of childhood trauma. But she weathered it with more grace than I expected. She legally changed her name back to Taylor. Put out a public statement on social media that went viral for all the right reasons. She wrote about growing up with a single mother who worked herself to exhaustion. About a father who died young but left a legacy of love. About getting lost in the pursuit of a life that looked good but felt empty. About learning the hard way that you can't run from yourself. The response was overwhelming. Thousands of comments from people who related to her story. Who'd also tried to escape their roots and found themselves lost. Who'd also prioritized appearances over authenticity. Who'd also hurt the people who loved them most in pursuit of people who barely knew them. She started working with the foundation. Really working, not just showing up for photo opportunities. She met with single mothers. Helped them apply for scholarships. Mentored their children. Listened to their stories and shared her own. And slowly, painfully, we rebuilt our relationship. It wasn't perfect. There were still moments of hurt and awkwardness. Still topics we avoided because the wounds were too fresh. But we were trying. We were both trying. Today, almost a year after that terrible wedding speech, she works beside me managing the foundation. We help women who raise their children alone so that no mother ever feels the humiliation I felt that night. So that no child ever takes for granted the sacrifices made on their behalf. And when she introduces herself now, she says her full name, Rebecca Elizabeth Taylor, with pride. Not shame. Not reluctance. Not the bitter acceptance of someone forced to own what they'd rather hide. But actual pride. Because she finally understands that a name is not a burden. It's a legacy. It's every person who carried it before you and every sacrifice they made so you could carry it forward. It's history and identity and belonging. She understands now what her father tried to teach her in those letters. What I tried to show her through my actions. That you can't build a future on the foundation of rejecting your past. That the person you're running from is the only person you can never escape. Is she perfect now? No. She still has moments where she slips back into old patterns. Where she cares too much about appearances or says things designed to impress rather than connect. But she catches herself faster now. Corrects course more quickly. And she shows up. For me. For the foundation. For the family legacy she almost threw away. She shows up even when it's hard. Especially when it's hard. The inheritance money is still in trust. She's met most of the conditions but has asked for it to remain there for now. I don't need it yet, she told me last month. And honestly, I don't trust myself with it yet. I want to earn it. Really earn it. Not just jump through hoops to access it. That's when I knew she'd truly changed. When she understood that the money was never the point. The point was understanding what that money represented. The years of work. The sacrifices. The love that drove someone to secure his daughter's future even as his own was ending. We have dinner together every week now. Just the two of us. Sometimes we talk about heavy things, the divorce, the lost years, the hurt that still hasn't fully healed. Sometimes we talk about nothing at all, bad television shows and garden problems and the weather. But we talk. We're present with each other. We're real. And that's worth more than $10 million. That's worth more than all the designer gowns and society weddings and penthouse apartments in Manhattan. Because at the end of the day, at the end of your life, the only thing that matters is whether you loved and were loved in return. Whether you honor the people who sacrificed for you. Whether you built something meaningful or just accumulated things that looked impressive. Rebecca knows that now. She learned it the hard way, through pain and loss and public humiliation. But she learned it. And maybe that's enough. Maybe redemption doesn't require perfection. Maybe it just requires showing up, doing the work, and choosing love over pride. My name is Beth Taylor. I'm 58 years old. And my daughter, Rebecca Taylor, is learning what it means to carry that name with pride. It's not the story I would have chosen. I would have preferred a daughter who never needed to be taught these lessons. Who understood from the beginning the value of what she'd been given. But life doesn't offer us the stories we want. It offers us the stories we need. And this is ours. Painful and messy and imperfect. But ours. And at my daughter's next wedding, if there ever is one, I know what she'll say. She'll say that she's proud to be my daughter. That being a Taylor isn't something to escape or erase or apologize for. That every sacrifice, every struggle, every moment of love that built the foundation she stands on is something to honor. She'll say these things because she means them now. Because she's learned what it costs to reject your name and how much more it costs to reclaim it. If this story touched your heart, give this video a like, subscribe to Karen Stories, and tell us in the comments what city you're watching from. And remember, never be ashamed of the name that raised you. Never forget the sacrifices made so you could have choices. Never reject the love that built you, even when that love comes in forms you don't immediately recognize. Because someday, when you've lived long enough and lost enough and learned enough, you'll understand that the name you were given, the family you were born into, the struggles that shaped you, these aren't burdens to escape. They're gifts to honor. And if you're lucky, if you're very lucky, the people who gave you those gifts will still be there when you finally figure that out. My daughter was lucky. She came back. She learned. She changed. Not everyone gets that chance. So if you're watching this and you've been running from your name, from your family, from the parts of yourself that don't fit the image you're trying to project, stop running. Turn around. Go home. While there's still a home to go back to. Because Beth Taylor is 58 years old, and she won't be here forever. And neither will your mother. Neither will the people who loved you first and longest and most unconditionally. Don't wait until an inheritance is at stake to learn what that love was worth. Learn it now. Honor it now. Carry your name with pride. Before it's too late.